Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. So my name is Omer. I'm co-founder and CEO of Infinidome. And what we do is we provide navigation resiliency solutions. I'm going to talk about how to enable critical UAV, mainly autonomous or BVLOS, beyond visual line of sight operations in a very, very challenged environment. Who here, according to the Waze, visited Beirut or Cairo? Show me hands. This is amazing, by the way. Before the war started, unfortunately, not on October 7th, it started a few days afterwards. We saw before the catastrophe that was on October 7th that might have been at least slightly prevented if, our abilities, IDF's abilities to jam and interfere with GPS would have happened before. But what we are seeing is that today, everybody is suffering from what we call either jamming, which is denial of service of GPS, or spoofing, which is tricking your GPS into thinking it's someplace else. Now, some of us have seen this by appearing suddenly in Beirut or Cairo, but spoofing can also happen in a very, very subtle way. Imagine yourself, you're able to trick the GPS and moving it slightly, drifting it slightly out of position. That means that you cannot rely on your GPS for any kind of navigation capabilities. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about GPS. So everybody knows it. Everybody uses GPS, right? In their Waze, in their phones, in our drones, in our tanks, in our vehicles. But what is GPS? GPS is 24 satellites to 31 that is run by the Americans. And this is the American system. Like GPS, we have GLONASS, the Russian system, which everybody uses. And by the way, in the Ukraine-Russian conflict, GLONASS is less attacked than GPS because the Russians like using it. Besides GLONASS, we have Galileo, the European system. We have Beidou, the Chinese system. All in all, we're talking about roughly 100 satellites orbiting Earth at around 20,000 kilometers above ground level, and are emitting signals that are being received by our phones, by our drones, by our tanks, by everything. But the signals that are being received over here are extremely weak. They're about as weak as if you take a 20-watt light bulb, light it up in Germany, and try to receive its signal here in Jerusalem. Well below the noise floor level. Now, GPS is unbelievable technology which extracts that signal out of the noise floor level and gives us accuracy which is incredible and unbelievably quick. But the problem is that all you need to do to disrupt it or to create a denial of service of GPS is to transmit something, anything really, in that same frequency, a little bit more powerful than that very weak signal that I told you about. To trick GPS, it used to require something called a software-defined radio, which was very large. It was about as big as a room. It cost about $1 million. Today, you can download stuff from the internet and create a pretty good spoofer, which tricks that GPS, and we're all suffering it today. So interferences can look in very different form factors. So the middle one is a GPS jammer that you can buy on AliExpress. This is something that you can buy for about 20 bucks, and you don't need to be a hacker to use it. All you need is about $20 and a credit card. If you press that little button on top over here, basically everybody does not have GPS from a distance of about 100 meters. It's about 0.2 watts. On the right, we're seeing a lot of these kinds of GPS jammers, handheld, used by military. And on the left side, you're seeing something that the Russians like to use, which is about the size of a truck and can kill GPS from tens of kilometers away. So it all comes in very different form factors. I want to show you here something really cool. So what you're going to see here is the map of Israel and its vicinity. Red means powerful jamming. Yellow means mediocre jamming. Green means no jamming or no signal. And what I want to show you is leading up to the war, leading up to October 7th, how GPS looked like. And then we're going to look at Ukraine in 2022. This is, by the way, free data that's available to all. So we always had a tough neighborhood in the past few years. What you're going to see is that jamming got worse and worse and worse, even before October 7th, partially because we did it, and we are jamming to protect ourselves from GPS-guided anything by the enemy, partially because the enemy is doing it as well, to hinder our capabilities. In the Ukraine, we're seeing something interesting. In the beginning of the war, we did not see a lot of jamming, sometimes around the other side of the Black Sea. But the Russians got better and better and better at EW, electronic warfare, and jamming was very, very prevalent in that areas. And we're seeing that towards the back end of 2022, we're seeing massive jammers all across Ukraine. This, by the way, is from about 2 weeks ago. This is Europe. This is not only Ukraine. What you're seeing, and I apologize for the Russian, I think, over here. What you're seeing over here is that the Baltics are under attack today. The Nordics are under attack today. Denmark, Eastern Germany is under attack today. And these are attacks that are happening on a daily basis, originated from Russia. And what we're seeing is that a lot of times, EW attacks, transparent attacks, precede an all-out war. Again, not trying to scare anybody, but it is scary. So the game has changed. The battlefield has changed. We talked about this several times today. It's no longer a game of super highly capable, highly expensive 20, 30, $50 million Reaper drones. The name of the game is build them in masses, deploy them quickly, improve them, and repeat. It's a game of $50,000 loading munition, not of $50 million super highly capable drones. But as we discussed previously, in Ukraine, for example, they are making them extremely cheap. But they need at least 2, sometimes 3 operators per one drone to make that thing hit the target. And then they expose themselves, and that makes them a lot less efficient. To be able to really leverage the advantage of these masses of platforms, you need autonomy. You need one-to-many capabilities. And to have one-to-many capabilities, you need navigation resiliency. So we are seeing that jamming is already crippling Ukrainian capabilities, especially EW jamming from Russia is crippling Ukrainian capabilities. In the beginning, the drones that the Ukrainians launched were a game changer. But then we started seeing them fall in the tens of thousands monthly. We are seeing that even the GPS-guided bombs that everybody talked about, that more and more percentage of the bombs today and the rockets today and the artillery today and the mortar shells today are GPS guided, but they're not hitting their targets as effectively as they should. We're seeing that game-changing weapons like the Gimblers by Lockheed Martin, the GMLRS, or the JDAMs, again, unbelievably game-changing weapons, did not really change the game as they should have because they're less effective in the presence of GPS jamming. We're seeing that here as well, and I'm at liberty to talk about this because IDF has talked about this as well. IDF is the one that is doing a lot of the interferences themselves, not only, also our enemies, but we're seeing that those same interferences by us or by our enemies are hindering our capabilities, crippling our UAVs, making them crash into the ground. So of course, it's being done to be able to protect ourselves from GPS-guided anything by the enemy, but it's hindering our own capabilities. We're seeing that more and more crashes have been reported, not really, the source of them not really clear, but we know for a fact that a lot of drones today are crashing because of our own jamming combined with enemy jamming as well. And of course, it doesn't only hurt military capabilities. Anything guided by GPS, especially in the air, is not as effective as it should, and sometimes completely cripples our capabilities for precise agriculture and other such applications. So the approach I'm going to talk about is, yes, it also combines our capabilities at Infinidome, but it's a multi-layered approach. I'm going to start by talking about, first of all, use multi-band, multi-constellation receiver. I told you previously about the different types of GPS or GNSS that's out there. I'm going to elaborate a little bit about that. Second of all, yes, it's American technology, but there is something called encrypted GPS. I'm going to talk about that as well. Then I'm going to talk about our core technology, which is protection of the receivers against such attacks. And finally, I'm going to talk about a completing approach, which complements, backs up, and augments everything and fuses it together. Because my approach, my spiel to everybody is, don't trust me, don't trust anybody. Don't create a single point of failure in your platform if you want that thing to be able to execute its mission. So let's talk about multi-constellation, multi-band. Multi-constellation basically says, let's not only use GPS. Let's try to use every satellite that's out there and available to all. Let's use GLONASS. Let's use Galileo. Let's use Beidou. Because at the end of the day, it means that we're going to use not 24 satellites, we're going to use almost 100 potential satellites. So by definition, we're going to see a lot more chances for those signals. When talking about different bands, so every GPS signal, every GLONASS, every Galileo signal actually uses multiple bands. L1 is 1575, L2 is 1227, L5, 1176, all different bands. Usually jamming hits one of them, sometimes two of them, maybe a third one will get through, especially and also when talking about urban canyons, for example, where signals are sometimes being interfered with or having something called multipath. So again, use multiple frequencies, use multiple constellations. That allows you for a much better chance to be able to get the GPS. So don't be cheap when buying and selecting a receiver. Encrypted GPS. So encrypted GPS has been used for a long time by the Americans. It was called SASM, Selective Availability Anti-Spoofing Module. Now, and it was a hardware key. Today it's called M-code. Again, this is technology that is being controlled by the US government. It's available, partially available to IDF. Nobody really likes to use it, but if you can, use it. Encrypted GPS is awesome. At the end of the day, nobody can hack it. Nobody can spoof it. It's expensive. It's very, very controlled, but if you can, by all means, use it. I want people to be aware of that. Unfortunately, it's still jammable. You can still, because it uses the same frequencies, you can still jam it. It's a little bit harder, but you can still jam it. Then I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing. So I told you about the weak signal of GPS. Think of it a little bit like a jammer comes in, overpowers your GPS, right? So imagine yourself going outside of your house in a very bright day, okay? The sun is blinding you, like the lights are doing to me right now, and you can't see anything. But if you hold your hand against the sun, it allows you to see much better around you, right? This is a little bit what we're doing. It was called an adaptive antenna technology, but we don't create the antenna. We only create the electronics. There are solutions like ours, which are retrofit, meaning that I can come to any platform you have, any GPS you have, disconnect the antenna, connect our anti-jamming solution, connect to it off-the-shelf antennas, 2 to 4 antennas, and that just made your GPS about 20 to 100 times more resilient to these types of attacks. So nothing is bulletproof. As I said, don't trust me, don't trust anybody. But if you're going to use GPS, protect it, especially if you have solutions like ours, which are off the shelf and are fully retrofit. And these solutions, as I said, do not necessarily have to mean that you have to change your entire navigation system. Use your existing receiver. We can even use your current antennas. Just add to it, on top of it, anti-jamming modules. Basically, what it allows you to do is that it allows you to attenuate or to cancel the effect of the jammer. And then finally, and I think this is a very critical slide as well, we're talking about what other solutions we can use to complement, backup, and augment GPS. As I said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So our approach basically says, let's use multiple layers of resiliency. Let's try to fuse them together. So our approach says use an INS, inertial navigation system, which has an input of GPS or protected GPS by our solutions, and add to it a radar velocity system or an optical system, video-based navigation. But again, don't trust whatever it is. Nothing is bulletproof. Nothing works 100% of the times. And this approach allows you for a lot of layers of redundancy. But it's very also important to make sure that you can fuse that data together. So what we're doing together with our partners, Honeywell Aerospace, is we created what's called a resilient navigation solution. And it's a full navigation solution for drones, which combines an INS, it combines our anti-jamming, and it combines a radar velocity system that actually uses Doppler technology to be able to compensate for the drift of the inertial navigation system. So from the beginning of the war, we were literally at the forefront of resiliency, and we were tapped in by a lot of forces in the field, by a lot of companies to be able to help them cope with the massive jamming and spoofing that we saw. And we saw that the threat, and again, sometimes it's by IDF itself, it's not static. It moves, it evolves, it's dynamic. Modulations change, techniques change. And that's why a solution that might have been very effective on October 7th or the end of October was sometimes rendered useless a few months afterwards if it wasn't updated in terms of algorithms, etc. So what we did is we're a small company, but we started deploying our teams all over Israel to try to learn as best as possible how to be able to optimize our solutions for these dynamic attacks. And we baked in something that we like to call a software-defined anti-jamming approach, which basically allows even for fielded products to be updated to be able to cope with the very, very dynamic threat that we're seeing. And we have accumulated thousands of hours in the air on multiple types of platforms, fixed wing, multicopters, loitering munition, and we are continuously improving our current products and our future products. Thank you very much.